Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are reviewing some new visualization features for the upcoming version of Wolfram Language. And somebody is making much background noise there and should adjust themselves.
It was probably me shifting my chair or something.
Okay. All right, where are we starting here? Did we need to come back to any of these multi-panel plot things, or did we conclude something? Did you fix those things about where the labels go?
Sorry, I was muted. So the notebook I just sent you has an updated visual for that, and I think it can even go a little bit further. I just haven't had it occurred to me middle of the day today, and I haven't had a chance to play with it yet.
Okay.
So that's the updated text position under multi-panel graphics grid. Okay, and the mags are still going to be kind of wonky, but so that's
what's going to be wonky?
The thickness of the frames there.
Okay.
Under magnification, because I haven't.
Oh, under magnified view. Okay.
Right. So,
okay.
So this is the idea that you had last time.
This one here.
Right, where we, sort of only drop things where they're getting close to other things. Positionally, not.
Yeah, this isn't horrible. The truth is, we could go.
Well, I mean, so there's two things I think that we can do. One of them easy and one a little bit more complicated.
I mean, these gutters are big enough that everything would fit, aren't they?
For those numbers, maybe, but you'd have 50 and 0 getting really close together.
Okay.
But so anyway, my two thoughts are, for the first column and the last column, right? I mean, we could still do the full ticks there, and only have the truly interior ones drop the endpoints. So the first column would have...
You're saying the first column, I see, the first and last columns could be complete. That's a good idea.
Right.
That's a good idea.
So that's the easy one. The other one, which I think is possible, but I need to figure out how to do it, is to still have the ticks when we drop them.
I think that would be really good. I fully support that. I think having first and last be full is good. I think having all ticks is really a very nice thing.
Mm-hmm. And then, the middle one is what we had before. And then the last one is just, throwing ticks on everything.
So is there an option to do that? Yes. Your method grid ticks right now.
Right.
Well, I think we should be able to tune this so that it's really good for everybody in the end.
Right.
So I don't think we can leave it as a method option for the time being.
You're saying leave it as a method option, or?
Yeah, I'm saying leave this method option thing. We don't want to promote it to some fancier option.
No, I don't think so. Not right now, at least.
Hopefully we can tweak it so that nobody will ever need to set that option.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. While we're in this section here, should we look at this?
Yeah, sure. So the default setting for alignment for the graphics grid, graphics row, graphics column family is center, center. And I mean, there's probably cases where, I mean, I'm concerned that if I, sort of turn on my stuff everywhere, that, there's going to be lots of cases that, somebody was relying on.
Yes. Well, how can you turn it on? So what are you proposing here?
I'm proposing that we turn it on via alignment goes to some setting, either all or full, or which, as far as I can tell on the docs, isn't actually used right now.
So sorry, where are you trying to set this?
So I would set it inside graphics, graphics grid, graphics row, that sort of thing.
Sorry, for the purposes. Okay, you only implicitly use a graphics row or a graphics column, graphics grid, right?
What do you mean by implicitly?
Well, this doesn't say graphics grid anywhere.
Right, and that's actually not going through graphics grid.
Okay, so what are we talking about graphics grid here?
I mean, because there's two aspects to this project. One is the multi-column stuff coming out of viz functions.
Yes.
And the other is trying to improve graphics grid.
Okay, but so this is not a good example. I mean, you're saying.
So just so you know, right now, Stephen, it's a minor but useful update to graphics grid that can happen
To get the axes to line up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's good. So why don't we say alignment arrow automatic?
Because I think automatic means something.
Well, does it? Let's find out.
It's probably just going to point you to alignment.
Yeah, well, this is clearly not going to work. To leave it as center. Well, default environment-based alignment based on environment sounds okay to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've also got some string alignments, don't we? Yes.
Well, but that's aligning on a character.
No, I understand that. Okay, so fine. I think automatic should be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
And are we making that the default, or are we making people opt in?
I think we should make it the default. I think otherwise nobody will be able to deal with this. It should just work. Show confidence in your code.
And eat the bug reports.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll still have some hidden global variable to revert back to the old code if because Wolfram Alpha or somebody is slow to update occasionally. So
yes.
And so then the other thing is, I think we really need to change frame and axes to automatic for a bunch of functions.
Agreed.
Not least of because
so that if axes switches off if you have a frame, is that the idea? Unless it's some.
So the reason that I want to change, so the core reason I want to change frame and axes is for the case above. That list line plot is framed, not axed.
Mm-hmm. But it could have axes.
I mean, it could, but I don't think that's what you want as the default in a column approach.
No.
And so I need the automatic for that at least.
Yes.
And since they're automatic, then I think it would be really nice to have frame and axes toggle and sync by default. So if you say
I agree, except for the case where the axes, where the thing, I mean, there are cases where you want to see the origin, even though you have a frame. But you're saying that should be a case you have to set explicitly. That might break some stuff for people. What does it do right now? In a plot, if you say framed, does it leave the axes?
So right now, it leaves the axes, but if the axis is within 10% of the...
I see, then it dumps it. Well,
then it dumps it.
Behavior.
Right. But, I mean...
Shouldn't that be the automatic behavior? So for plots, maybe that's the automatic behavior. Unless it's in a column, in which case it dumps the axes altogether.
I mean, I think my experience has been that every time I've set frame goes to true, there's a 95% chance that I'm then setting axes goes to false.
Agreed.
I think it's more like 80% for me, but yes, I agree there's a high probability.
And setting them to automatic doesn't prevent you from setting both of them to true.
No, I understand that. I'm just concerned about breaking stuff where people have assumed that axes will continue to be on even when they put a frame there. It's a no-brainer to say if you're going to do the multi-panel thing, then you can get rid of axes. I have no problem with that.
Right.
I'm just considering the case where I think it's a little bit more of an issue, and we should look at documentation and other examples to decide that when, that we should do this. I don't have a problem in having axes to automatic by default. Okay? But the question is what the behavior should be. And whether it should always switch them off as soon as there's a frame. It's okay, I think. Axes to automatic should switch axes off when there is a frame by default.
Woohoo!
I think that's okay. But can we think that through? Could you send out mail to people and just think that through with all the functions? Because you're listing, statistically a bunch of functions here, and I have no idea. Like this one here that has true false. What is that one?
I believe that's audio plot.
Okay.
So it has a frame and an x-axis.
Okay, so this one here, for example, what's that?
I think those are a couple of the financial plots, and I don't know why they're true, and not just true.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've got to go through this in more detail, but I guess I'm okay with your main conclusion. Okay,
I'll send it out an email to probably.
What does axes to automatic do right now here? What does that one do?
I don't remember which that is.
I think you need to look at the ones that say axes to true. I mean, because you've got plenty which are axes to false. So let's find out which functions have axes true. Should I do this? How do I do that? Is there a nice, easy way to do it?
Let me.
Can you just send me the list?
See if I still have that notebook open.
I mean, it's interesting that there's one with axes to true and frame to true.
No, axes true frame automatic is parametric plot. Because the frame turns on when you have a region.
Yeah, well, that's a nice case.
I think that code got lost in a front-end crash. I can regenerate it offline.
Fine. Then send it through.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go back. Are we looking at your notebook here, or are we going back to Roger's?
I would look at my notebook. I think mine has all the interesting cases for the remaining functions.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So, complex plot.
So this is, so there's 4 complex plotting functions now. Rem plot, absarg plot, complex plot, and complex plot 3D. And so we have this option for complex plot, and I think complex plot 3D, although it's less interesting there, less necessary there, on how the abs component gets represented. And right now, the default behavior is that the abs component isn't represented at all within complex plot. All you see is the arg coloring.
Why aren't you representing it with gray level?
That's the second case.
Because it's tricky.
Yeah.
Actually, so Stephen, the third case is just pure. It's not gray level. It's
saturation, brightness.
Yeah.
And so we have like 3, 4, and 5. I think are all different approaches on this.
I don't think we should claim one of them.
We needed a name to set it to.
Well, let's give it a name that represents something to do with its functionality, because nobody's ever going to know what any of these are.
Right. So taller is a global scale. It is dark at 0 and light at infinity. And so depending on what you're, so that's like -2 to 2 in each direction. if you did -10 to 10, then the light and dark areas would get smaller. The one that is Wolfram is darkened for the bottom 5% of height values and lightened for the top 5%.
In a quantile plot, top 5% quantile wise.
Quantile wise, yes. So we have a sampling of our abs over a grid on the domain, and the top 5% and bottom 5% get lightened and darkened.
Do we have somebody from graphic design here? No. Could we? Let me ask. Okay. This color function shading, we've not had that option before. Is that correct?
No. And possibly we want something that is more. I mean, if we wanted to play it safe, it could be complex shading or something, or that's tighter to this set of functions.
Well, this is shading related to the abs, is that right? Or it's shading related to both the abs and the arg?
It's shading relating to abs. And the reason that it's not just rolled into color function is that then we can change the color function for the arg independently. Sort of more easily.
To me why it doesn't color function with a two arguments being fed into it. I mean, color function
can, but it's very hopeless to use, Stephen. That's the problem. Okay, so for instance, density plot 3D opacity, we have an opacity function, right? So it could be rolled into a color function, but it's hopeless to use because you want to change the hue scale independently of opacity.
Okay.
So it can be done. It's just not usable.
Okay, but color function scaling is the wrong name. This has to do with the, this is, I mean, it would be something like abs color function.
You could do that if you want.
I mean, in which case I would just go with complex shading. Well, that maybe sounds a bit weird, but
you could call it abs arg shading.
True, that would work. I mean, and
that would allow you to then give a function which can take the abs and the arg as arguments.
Right. I mean, so I think it actually does take a function, and it actually takes, all four components: rem, abs, arg. I mean, color function does also, but I think color function shading does as well.
Well, internally, yes, we didn't expose that, and it does apply on the arg as well. So
right. If you scroll down a little bit more, you get the really crazy ones that are shading by arg or abs and arg.
What is this showing here?
So the left part is the abs shading, or a representation of the abs shading. And so a lot of these are basically cyclic in log abs. So that you get enough, so that you get periods that show you behavior. And you can sort of see relative rates of growth, so to speak. And these are all images that I've set the magnification to 50%. So you can make them bigger if you want or need to.
Why is it looking so scratchy here? It's a bitmap.
Yes, like I said, they're images that have been...
Can I just run this?
Sure.
Okay. So that's a logarithmic scale in the abs. And in the arg, are you always labeling it with pies? I mean, that will make it fairly clear that it's the arg.
I think we're always labeling it with pies.
What about with degrees?
Min, does bar legend take a target units option?
It's probably not doing what you're thinking it's doing. It's just adding the unit.
Okay, so it's not converting.
Right.
So we should have a way of doing that in degrees.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, so the issue here is both the name and the default. I'm not a big fan of having the default not have any encoding of abs. And, you know, if we have one that we thought we would proudly call after ourselves, why the heck don't we use that as the default?
Right, so that would become automatic, and the top one would become none.
Okay, but then that's actually not, that would be an abs.
Or we can name it abs, and the current abs we can make cyclic abs or something.
Well, I'm not sure what the, okay, so the issue here is you are using, so color function, if I'm understanding correctly, applies only to the arg. Is that correct?
I mean, color function by default applies only to the arg.
So the #1 of the color function is the abs, is the arg rather.
Slot 1 is re, slot 2 is m, slot 3 is
Abs.
Abs, and slot 4 is arg.
Well, then maybe we should call this abs arg color function, which is just a reslotting of the color function. Do you get what I'm saying? If you really think it's important to have these orthogonal options, that would be the obvious way to do it. It's the same as a color function, but with color function, the thing gets to apply itself to you know, abs arg, right? And in this case, it gets to apply itself probably to abs arg. Am I making sense? I mean, I personally don't think this is right, because I think that this, again, Roger, can you say what your issue was? I mean, that you
so the main thing. Okay, so I think we're muddling a few things up together here.
So Stephen, can you try something real quick?
Okay.
Take whichever one of those you like the most, or choose one at random.
Well, let's choose this one.
Okay, and change the color function to rainbow, say. String rainbow.
What on earth is that applying the color function to?
That's going to apply to arg.
Why is it applying to arg? You just told me that it applied to have 4 arguments.
Yes, and strings are special, and we get to choose what they apply to.
Okay, but then I think probably the color function has the arguments fed in the wrong order.
No.
Look, why don't you have the color function? Why don't you have color function feed initially to arg? Then it would just work.
I mean, Plot3D does the same thing. Color function arguments are x, y, z. Z is the default and unnamed.
Okay, but still, the fact that we go re-m abs arg, well, I guess it's okay. Yeah, all right, okay. So what's your point here?
So the point is that
what you just did, Stephen, was to change the hue. It's a 1D color function, and you just changed that.
I understand. This is quite nice, and I think if the first thing was called abs arg,
if they were all muddled up, you would have to.
I know. That's why I'm suggesting call that other one abs arg color function, right? And then the pure color function, the string will by default apply to the arg, or it will apply to all 4 of those things. And the abs arg color function, you can also have be a string, be something or other there that applies itself to the abs by default. The 1 argument form applies to the abs.
Right. I mean, so what your abs arg color function needs as one of its arguments, though, is the color from color function.
Oh, really?
Right. I mean, so going back to the one.
How does that work? I'm sorry. How does that work? What does it do then?
Well, it's going to build a new color, right? So it's going to combine the colors.
How? With some kind of blend or what?
Yeah, something like that. Or converts it to, lab or something and does lightness and darkness.
I assume, in my prototype at least, which we didn't have this, but then you would strip all the other components of the color and you would keep the hue. And then AppsArg is in charge of the other components, which is saturation and value.
Sandra on a live stream is making the point that given that we have an opacity function, which after all also does this kind of, this is a retrofitter, right? Opacity function goes on top of the existing color function. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So then the obvious thing to do would be to have some kind of shading function that goes on top of the color function also.
Yeah, shading function might be a bit general.
Yeah.
Well, but what should we call it then?
The problem with shading is that there's many more things coming for shading.
Fine.
Right. I mean, I would be fine with complex shading function. I mean, especially if it's going, or especially since it's going to be very specific to AppsArg sorts of things.
Roger, what do you think about that, given all the other things that are coming with shading?
I'm a little bit leery about using shading. I think it should be called color again, because we are using color again.
Well, do you want to call it ABS color function, complex color function? Are you sure we can't do this with some kind of right-hand side to color function? Why can't we just do this? Why can't we just say color function in the cases that you want it? Why can't we just say, thala, rainbow? I mean,
that could work.
This really is a corner case. Let's not invent some huge mechanism to do this. If this is what you want to, call it by names, so to speak. Let's have names for the color function that are, we could even prefix these names by some complex or something to indicate.
I don't think they need to be prefixed. And we can do that. Taller rainbow or rainbow taller?
Well, I don't think it should matter.
Well, in the case that you give pure functions for both, it will.
I see. Then it should be arg. Well, you're suggesting it's arg abs. The arg function and the abs function. Okay, but what happens if you want to specify, if you want the default arg?
Automatic.
But, okay.
I mean, that said, we could accept, color function goes to taller on its own.
I would think so.
I mean, that's not a problem. I mean, we can disambiguate strings all over the place.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I think this is what we should do. The only question is it arg abs or abs arg?
I think arg is the most important, probably.
But nevertheless, in this case, by the time you've got the double string, I think it should be abs arg and to correspond to this. If you're actually going to specify both of them, and anyway, if you specify a single string, it'll just go to the arg by default.
I see. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what are we going to name these things? These are very inconsistently named.
Yeah, we shouldn't keep these names.
So just tell me what these are.
Okay, so the first one is none. Second one is...
Well, why is that none? Oh, because it actually has nothing there. It's not coloring.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The second one is ab cycles.
Sounds like some kind of weird exercise in touch.
Abs of steel.
I'll put that in as an alias for you, Roger.
Okay.
Okay. Why is it abs cycles? Why is that the right name?
Because the shading is, I mean, the effect of the shading is cyclic. Abs isn't cyclic, of course, but
yeah. Well, I think abs cyclic would be better than abs cycles. Or we could use a mod type term.
No, I think cyclic is better.
Okay.
I don't think.
Right.
I think cyclic abs I like better than abs cyclic. It reads.
Why?
I don't know. It's just somehow easier to say.
Cyclic abs, but it isn't cyclic. I mean, what do you think the words that describe this thing are?
They are actually contours.
Yes, that's true. Well, they're not really contours. They're abs.
They're approximation to contours.
What do you mean?
I mean, so a contour is, a single curve.
We could have contours. That's a perfectly interesting thing to have.
Right, and we can do that with mesh. That's
right.
Not controversial. Right. I mean, but so every one of those egg shapes, right, corresponds to a constant abs value.
Right.
Sure. Yes. I mean, you get to see the contours just visually because that's the place where there's a big jump in the opacity level. Is this opacity, by the way? No, this is...
No. It's not opacity. It's saturation and value. It's in the HSV color model.
Okay, but so if what would be the third thing to say here? If we said abs cyclic, and then we said brightness or something, or value. Or value is confusing.
Well, we need to add the HSV color model. But
does that make any sense? I don't know.
I think this is a case where having something that's entirely accurate
doesn't help, right?
Yes. Yeah, we could name them Bob and Tom and whatever.
Yeah, all right, okay. Someone on a live stream is asking about color function scaling, which was also something I was wondering about for the minus pi to pi business and so on. How do you determine what that range is that you're going to feed to the color function? I think you're going to need some string names for color function scaling to determine whether it's minus pi to pi or 0 to 2 pi.
So if you say color function scaling goes to false, then you will get minus pi to pi.
Okay.
True is 0 to 1.
Okay. How about 0 to 2 pi?
And
what does color function scaling do for... So can you independently set the color function scaling for abs and arg?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, what is the Thaler thing?
So Thaler is a global gradient of light to dark. Or dark
so you see,
light.
I'm saying that there's no banding in this case. Stephen?
Yeah, I see that, but I'm just trying to understand, do we really want to name it after somebody so nobody knows what it is? Or do we want to call it something?
Yeah, I'm fine calling it something else.
Yeah, I don't really like tombstone names, even for functions. They don't tell you anything about it, unless you have the secret joke list.
No.
I mean, so that one is sort of an absolute abs sort of thing.
Right.
So abs squared.
Why squared?
Because it's absolute abs. What's this one then?
That is what is. I mean, so that's the quantile one, and so that will be automatic.
Yeah, well, it's got to have a name anyway.
Yeah, sure.
One downside to that Thaler one is that it tends to be either very white or very dark. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, it depends on how big your scale is.
It does. But having looked at many of those plots, they tend to be either very white or very dark, as a general rule.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that's a bad choice. I mean, then we should fix the heuristic.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that's what it does. And the fixed heuristic is the quantile one that you saw below there.
You mean the Thaler thing, as you're saying, is bad because it is?
Yeah.
I mean, there's cases where it looks good, but, you know.
All right, so quantile abs, which is otherwise known as automatic. Okay, do we have more names here? What is peng?
So that's the one.
That's Min's scheme.
Oh, that's
right.
Okay,
So that's the one that only have saturation. Because so the thing that is that how do we represent that in the legend? It is difficult to have both saturation and brightness to be represented in the legend. For the quantile.
What the heck is that? Well, that's certainly not a winner.
Well, those can be cleaned up.
Right.
That's a different problem. Yes. You're right. Acceptable.
I was going to say, Min, that one can also be zero infinity.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what this is and how it relates to this other one up here.
Well, so the quantile one is that if it is a pole, then you adjust the brightness so that it became dark. If it is a zero, then you adjust the saturation so it became light. But this mechanism is very difficult to represent in the legend on the left-hand side of the legend. And then so we saw that, so the idea of only show the saturation is very similar to opacity function. You only have one parameter there.
I mean, to me, this one looks better than this one. I mean, this one, it really draws attention to the weird black and white spots, which are quite meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this seems like a much better representation.
I mean, we could make that the default.
I would think that should be the default.
And how does it look at different scales?
The implementation in the build currently is an absolute, but we were thinking about maybe we should experiment with the quantile as well.
I mean, the absolute probably works okay in this case.
Right.
That looks very beautiful. I don't really know what it is, but it looks beautiful anyway.
Well, so the zero is the light spots, but
no, the zero is the colorful points.
There you see.
Oh,
see, you just have to look at the legend.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I think we make peng the default.
I mean, this is very, very. I think this is more scientific looking. This looks more like some kind of weird, planetscape on a triple star or something, where it's being illuminated by multiple lights.
Well, you haven't seen others.
But,
there are others. That's even more crazy. Yes.
You have to bigger range for it to be interesting.
Even then, it's still not that interesting.
Yeah.
Oops. That looks less misleading than this.
Mm-hmm.
But you also got to fix the scale, right?
Right, but that can just be 0 to infinity.
Okay, but what's the auto scaling of the grayness levels? How does that work?
I mean, it's absolute, right, Min, for yours?
Yeah, but that's never going to work. Absolute is never going to work. What do you mean by absolute? Absolute within the plot range, or absolute?
Within the
It's actually within the plot range, yes. So it's not really 0 to infinity.
Okay.
But I think we can effectively label it as 0 to infinity.
Why?
Right. Well,
I mean, is it just going to turn? Is it just going to be white? What's it going to look like? Is it logarithmic or is it not logarithmic?
it is.
And by the way, when it is logarithmic, we should be saying that in these things here.
I agree.
Global log abs or something.
Okay.
All right. So listen, my strong thing is don't have these black holes all over the place. Okay.
Sounds good.
I mean, I think that's a mistake. I think it makes them look silly. Okay, so can you continue iterating on these things? And I think we've got the default clear. These are nice. I mean, this is very nice. Okay, so is it the case that there are also higher?
So there are interesting things that you can read off from this, Stephen. So, for instance, you can read off the order of a zero or the order of a pole.
I understand by seeing how many times it goes around.
Right, and that means that you can also see when there is an essential singularity, for instance.
Yes. I mean, this is very cool. Very cool. So let's just look for one. Okay, so there's also a complex plot 3D. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that uses geometry for abs. Obviously.
Yeah, so the shading will be none for it by default.
I see. So that do we have a plot range arrow scaled something or other? We don't have that, do we?
No.
That's quite magnificent, really. Let's just do something famous here. Why is it taking so long?
It's evaluation time for Zeta.
I know. Well, there's the big pole. Hard to see the critical line.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you
sometimes if you want plot 1 over Zeta instead, might be more interesting and kick up the Y range, the M range.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. I'm just playing here. Okay. Well, it's quite beautiful. Is that the usual default for cutting it off? I thought it was gray usually when you cut it off.
It normally when you see it cut off, it's under the default lights, and this is neutral.
It has to be neutral, Stephen. Obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
But why is it? It looks white. Shouldn't it be gray?
No, white's the usual.
It's just under the lights that we project onto it with the usual setup. It looks gray, or whatever color it is.
Right. Okay. Well, this looks wonderful. And anything further to figure out with this?
I don't think so. I think the color, whichever name it was we ended up with is...
Well, this color function shading is irrelevant in this case, right? This is purely color function.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it probably, is, getting
Are we happy
or something.
with this form that the zero is around the reds? What is this thing anyway? Is this a rainbow spectrum or what?
This is a brand new color function.
Okay.
So this is color data of balanced hue.
That's a good idea.
So it's very close to hue, but it doesn't get quite as bright in the yellows or the cyans.
But a brightness as in perceived human brightness, which is that right?
Right. Correct.
Oh, it's good. It's nice. Are we going to use that elsewhere as well?
Probably, maybe. And
okay,
this is the first example of us doing a two-dimensional color function. If you scroll up when we had the abs.
Yes. Yeah, I get it. Okay, all right.
So then there's a couple other options for the complex plots.
You know, somebody's asking an interesting question on our live stream. Can you export a slowly rotating video or GIF for presentations? The answer is it's easy to write code to do that, but it would be actually an interesting thing to be able to do that automatically. And we had a plan for that, right, Roger, years ago.
Yes, and actually we will revitalize that now because we're working on video, and actually GIF export has been updated. We could do that there too. But I think we'll have a lot of things that's going to make it easier to produce videos, including those slowly rotating things, which is obviously a very good idea. Which, right. Yes, we had it. We meant to.
What's that?
And yeah, we meant to, and a whole slew of other things, which will now reactivate.
Good. Okay, let's go on to the next thing.
Okay, so the REM plot has a couple of options. I just created.
Where's REM plot? What do you?
It is. It has a ref page.
But so there's a thing that I can do instead of complex plot. You're saying here,
right? Yeah. So there's REM plot and absarg plot, which are plotting over a real variable instead of a complex variable.
Well, that's rather unpleasant.
Oh.
Fix the error.
Yeah. We'll take care of that.
So they need Z needs to be real now.
What does this do?
So this plot's
think of you requested this, Stephen, first of all. But second, it's when you have a real argument, like a Fourier transform, the frequency is real.
Yes.
Okay. So if you have it means that you have basically two curves of a single parameter.
So do REM plot of square root of x. X goes from -5 to 5.
Oh. Yeah, okay. This is a completely different thing.
Yes, it's a completely different thing.
Right. So that's using dashed lines to represent the complex case.
Right. And so it has two specialized options. REM style, which controls the dashing versus what the differentiator is for.
It's called REM style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, as opposed to having plot style go to an association, where we say, re arrow blah, im arrow blah.
Correct. I mean, so the other thing is that it combines with plot style. So if you say plot style goes to red in your REM plot, then you still have the dashing and.
I see. So this is an overlay thing again.
Yes.
So if I say,
red, blue, or dash dotted or
dash. What is it called?
Dashed, comma, dotted.
Okay. By the way, and maybe Jeremy would like to comment on this. I personally think dotted is a better default than dashed for the imaginary part.
Yeah, here it looks good. Yeah, I agree.
No, but I mean, so this would be REM style none. Whoops, I don't know what I just did there. Oh, that's REM, right?
Right.
So this would be. I mean, I'm just because I know my square root. I think that's better than the dashed case.
Could you scale it down just a little? Just
set it to its default size.
Yeah.
I mean, the dotting won't change, or I mean, the dotting will have a.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, my concern is that it possibly de-emphasizes the, that dotted is less heavy than.
No, don't worry about it. This is
Okay.
fine. It's very obvious there's something different going on.
Yeah, and I think dashed us really small size is going to look weird. I mean, so dotted does better at small scales.
Okay, so dotted instead of dashed.
Yeah, but this is a useful kind of plot.
Right, and then it's going to,
Now, what is the Abzarg plot?
So go ahead and delete that, and it does the same thing, but with Abzarg and sort of a complex plot sort of thing. So
this is like x plus I. I mean, this is, you're saying that it's a polar plot, basically.
No. It's still one variable, like. Yeah. So.
Well, why didn't that? Oh, what happened the first time?
You still had the rem style.
Oh, I see. And so what's this representing?
So the height is abs, and the coloring is, the arg. And in this case, for square roots, everything is either 0 or pi or whatever.
Right. How do I?
And so you get two colors.
How do I?
Just open the docs page for it. That's the easiest way to get more interesting examples.
Okay.
And I think those actually need to be reevaluated.
Those colors are not. Is this using the balanced?
That is using the balanced hue again.
Definitely, the yellow looks like it's dropping out here. These honestly look a little bit. The colors don't thrill me here. I think it would be better, given that these are, because the yellows are just really dropping out. I mean, can't we use some kind of slightly darker thing by default?
I mean, if you make it darker, the yellows are going to go brown.
Jeremy, we need your help.
I mean, you could kind of bypass yellow and merge it. You'd still go through a little bit of brown, but you could push through it.
But I think the primariness of these colors does not look very good here.
Yeah.
I mean, try setting color function goes to hue.
Is it important to keep a continuous hue, something cyclic or not?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Okay, that's even more garish. I mean, this is a really bad color in my view.
I mean, so the other thing that we can do is we can adjust the thickness.
Well, I don't think that's going to help. But what's a possible color data? What's a possible
do filling axis?
Is it going to do anything?
I don't know. Should have implemented it. Oh, you didn't. Ah, you didn't.
Take it down to one function.
Oh, there it is.
I think that was a feature. That when you had two of those things trying to fill, that it's
sure can't.
Okay, look, that obviously looks silly. The yellow is like burning out, So I think we need another color function for this. Something that is more balanced.
Can you take out the color function hue again?
Oh yeah. Well, that's better. I mean, the yellow is still rather,
Is it just coincidence that yellow's getting squeezed like that at such a small percentage?
No, it's not a coincidence. Is it a coincidence?
Well, I think it's a property of hue.
Okay.
Green is huge, and
that could be balanced better too then. Even if you could, it'd be
Yeah,
nice.
right. In this balancing, you could balance that. Have more yellow, less green here.
Okay, we'll see what Tim can do.
It really pops out as looking like it means something.
Right, but let's come back to this case here, where we have pure lines that are hewing away, so to speak. What could we do with this? I think what would happen if we just made it darker? So in other words, let's imagine this is hue. What's HSV? What should we do here? Let's say, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but let's say something like that. That's obviously not very good, but something. Give me some values here.
Let's stick a 1 there in the middle.
Right. The brightness you might want it to be like 75%. Yes.
But I think that's better. That looks less silly.
Then the balanced.
Well, I don't know about balance, but I mean the darkness of those lines looks less play-schooly.
Is balanced exposed? Can you get to it?
Color data balanced hue.
Can you modify it? Is there a way to? Yeah, probably not.
I mean, not easily.
No, you can't do this, right? You can't do this thing, darkening. I mean, I could write a darker of color function.
Darker balanced hue.
It's not auto-completing, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get that in there. You need a slot.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong here?
Try 0.1 or something. No.
That's not bad. That's a lot better than the original one. It's a lot better, in my view. It's a lot better than. Let's see what happens if we go to 0.2 here. These seem okay. Jeremy, your comments?
Yeah, I think 0.1 was enough, at least through Zoom. But yeah, better than full brightness. And would the fill use transparency?
I mean, so if you have multiple things, the fills are just straight colors. If you have one of them, I think it was full opacity at the moment.
No, I mean, we don't do that for other functions.
Yeah, we shouldn't do that here. Yeah, if that went down to lower opacity, it would look pretty decent.
But you'd have to brighten it at the same time.
I was going to say, I think we have. Where are we doing that? I think there's a place where we effectively darken the linear components of something compared to filled regions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm drawing a blank on where that is because it was years ago that we did that.
I think it's in stuff to do with region plots, isn't it? Isn't it the thing where you have a parametric?
It may be the region plots.
Yeah, it's where you have a parametric. You have a parametric plot that encloses a region versus doesn't.
Right.
All right, good. So we've got some minor tweaks there. All right, what's next here?
So I don't think you've really looked at the geovector and stream plots.
I have not. And also, what's this interval marker?
So those were originally error bar something in error bar markers and error bar style. And the last time we looked at those, we came up with interval as.
And that's for list plot.
List plot and things that are accepting uncertainty. Around.
If I do so, let me just make a table of just random. Well, actually, let's just do
And I think those lines are also being affected by magnification.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Okay, fine. So now this is the style. You're talking about the style. By the way, what happens if I do list line plot here? Okay, beautiful.
And if you set interval markers goes to bands, then you won't get the discrete things, but
like this.
Sorry. It's undergoing renaming right now, so band instead of... That was fun.
It's a little exotic.
What is going on there? Can you send me that example?
Yep.
It should be something centered around that straight line there.
One would think. Especially since every interval... Yeah, it's a symmetric interval here.
Right. That's really interesting.
Wait a minute, why aren't these symmetric intervals?
Because you didn't generate them.
No, he did.
Look, I did. I said around and then a single number. Oh, it can be negative. What does it mean when you have a negative?
Oh.
That's a bizarre case. What does it mean when the error is negative?
I have no idea.
So okay, that's a Jose question.
I mean, I'm guessing that, right? I mean, so around isn't actually in the system yet, right? I mean, Jose hasn't merged around yet.
Okay, well, you better ask Jose what around does with a negative error.
Yep. So if you change that to 0.1 to 0.3 or something. There we get symmetric error.
Yes. Okay, so this is a pathology that happened for the negative, from that negative thing.
Right.
So that's fine. That's nice. Okay.
And so we have a handful of named strings at the moment.
And what can you say? What does the thing take by default?
What do you mean?
I mean, what does interval markers take? Can it only take named strings? I mean,
it can undocumentedly take a pure function, but I'm...
Okay. So Sandra on our live stream is asking, for number line plots, do interval markers work?
So that is a bug at the moment. I think it got reported over the weekend or the late last week.
Okay.
But number line plot is definitely going to accept around and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but is it going to accept interval markers representing both an around interval and an interval? Do you get what I'm saying?
Not entirely.
Okay, so look, number line plot has the possibility of having actual intervals specified, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not obvious that actual intervals should be rendered the same way as an around interval.
Right. Okay. So go up to your first list plot there.
Okay.
And make a version of that uses interval. Okay. And maybe you want the factors of 10 back in there.
Okay, I see. So interval doesn't have caps on it.
Correct. Yeah, with the automatic markers, it doesn't.
Okay, that makes sense. So interval markers, does it give things which can distinguish between intervals and arounds?
The pure function case, which isn't documented, has I think, ways of getting everything that you could possibly want.
Okay.
Because it also has to deal. It has to deal with the case of, am I doing a bunch of single function applications like those top two, or am I doing one big function application like you would want with bands?
Right. So there's some design left to be done on that. We don't need to address that right now.
Correct.
By the way,
we're going to continue for 12.1 and roll out more uncertainty plotting, and we'll get to farther into this.
Question. This is for Jeremy. Back on here. The claim from our live stream is that red seems to be absent, but I don't think that's correct. I think we just darkened the red here.
Yeah, no, it's there. It might be a Zoom issue or a live stream issue.
Yeah. The other question is to use black lines sandwiching this, but I don't think that will work. I think lines are lines.
Yeah. I think it'd muddy it up.
There. Okay. Okay. What's next here? We did uncertainty. Okay, so we've got the geovector stuff.
Yep. I think that's the last thing.
Okay. So geovector. So we've got the actual geovector object.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I went through this
quickly with Jose yesterday.
Yes, that's right. But was this geovector or was this?
So
is Jose with us, by the way, here?
He is not, but he can be brought in on short notice.
Okay. Let's bring him in.
Okay, I'll give him a call real quick.
Well, here, I can ask somebody to do this.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, was this the thing that I looked at yesterday with him? And is this now changed to what we discussed that it would be? No, that was, I looked at something different yesterday. That was.
You looked at this page yesterday and you changed modulus to magnitude in one spot.
Oh, okay, fine.
I caught the tail end of that Twitch meeting.
Okay, fine.
Or actually, no, I watched it, the tail end of it at home later.
Okay. Yeah, because we had a long discussion about frames and so on. Three-dimensional vector. Okay. So this is the analog of geodirection, is it not? But does geodirection have a third argument? Can it go up as well?
I'm sure it can.
Azimuth direction. So that, I'm sorry, it's geodisplacement. It doesn't seem to be able to go up. So what's the analog between geovector and geodisplacement?
Well, the displacement is a difference of two vectors.
I mean,
usually. Well,
I mean, so displacement is a distance on
object.
Earth.
It's an unanchored relative object. Whereas geovector is always anchored.
It's anchored and it's not saying anything about anywhere other than the anchor point.
Hello, this is Jose.
Hi, we're looking at geovector.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to understand the relationship between geodisplacement and geovector.
Yes, I think if you can you go to the very last example of geovector?
Last basic example?
No, last example. I think. Oh, it's a dynamic. Does that work? The previous one, perhaps? Yes, that one exactly. So there you have the vector in red, and you have the geodisplacement in black. And if you, I don't know whether that works. Yeah, okay. So you see how the displacement is a geodesic and it's curved. The vector is just saying the initial direction.
I get it. By the way, there's something horribly wrong with the arrow for the vector.
That is really interesting.
Yes, the manipulate is changing to center. Well, it's not respecting the start. Just that
No. The arrowhead is like changing in size.
Oh yes, I fixed that in like yesterday.
Okay.
Based
I know
on
what it is.
line width or something, image width of the line. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So and by the way, the color of these geovectors, did that get fixed? Did you get some design into that?
I just asked Jeremy for his opinion. The reason for that is that we are using GeoMarker, and GeoMarker by default uses red.
But I don't think it uses that red, does it?
It uses a darker red, I thought.
That's what I thought also.
Yeah, if we want red, it's the red of what GeoListPlot, the line there, which is a darker spec for that.
Okay. So but all right, so GeoVector GeoMarker of GV. What is this about?
Yes, so the idea is that in geographics, when we have an object like geoposition, we don't show a point. We just take into account for the computation of the georange. And the same thing would happen for a geovector object. In order to draw something, we have to wrap it in a geoprimitive, in this case, GeoMarker.
So it could be point, for example.
It could be point, exactly.
And in which case, it would just be the root of the geovector.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, and then GeoMarker takes in the second argument the full specification of vector marker. So we can have any vector marker that is supported there.
Wait a minute. So we're looking then at, okay, so we're looking at GeoVector and at StreamPlot.
GeoVector plot and GeoStreamPlot. Not GeoVector. We wanted to look.
So I would like to get rid of those first two usage statements.
Location vector?
Or you know, so
don't vectors always have a base anyway?
Well, so the fun thing is that GeoVector plot predates GeoVector. And so the original input was, pair of numbers, or, geoposition, comma, pair of numbers. And the vector was just, X, Y, or whatever. And so I think, it should just eat geovectors or, some flavor of geovector all the time.
Well, the question is, could GeoVector plot have a meaningful sense without having
I'm gonna have to leave.
Yeah, I have to go soon also. But hold on one second. Geographic locations. Okay, but those are the locations. But you're saying really the only thing you plan to plot here. What does vector plot take?
Vector plot takes, big nested list of numbers.
So it's basically dense and sparse.
No, actually, what we usually want is list vector plot.
Right. And so you have a pair of numbers that is x, y, the origin, and the pair of numbers that's the direction.
Okay.
And that's the sort of thing that I would like to not have.
Why? I mean, it seems as a courtesy we might as well have it. I mean, you can wrap it in geovectors, but I don't think it should be essential.
Well, so part of the issue is that, especially with geovectors, we have geovector and geovector E and U. So we have the polar versus the Cartesian coordinate system.
Fair point. Jose, do you have any comments on this? I'm beginning to get convinced here.
I think by specifying the vector head, it's clearer which frame you are using.
Yeah, and there are probably other things like all kinds of projections and all kinds of stuff that might go into that geovector.
Right. By having lists, one would have to assume more or less arbitrarily one of the choices.
Okay.
The inputs are going to get cleaned up. That'll turn into just a plain geovector.
Right. And why wind vector data? I mean, it seems it's a bit like geo-elevation data, which can take. How does geo-elevation data take? It can either be at a single point, right, or over a region.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it seems that our API to wind vector data cannot take regions. It has to go point by point, which is a pity because it makes it rather slow.
Well, but surely we can. I mean, that's a completely different problem, right? To solve that.
Yes, but it's I mean, I see what you mean. One is the notation we use. The other one is how we do it internally. Yes, but it's going to work slower.
Okay, I understand, but I suspect we can make a version of wind vector data that, like geo-elevation data, has. I mean, clearly there's a certain granularity to the wind. Okay, is this? Is it on the geo server, or is it on some weather server, or where is it?
This is in some external geo server. Yes, external server of information that we connect to. It's not in the geo server.
Really? Well, okay, that's a separate discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Can we bring that up with? I mean, is that Francisco deals with that, or somebody else?
It's Jason Martinez.
Okay, I think we should bring that up, and if necessary, we should cache these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like a good thing to be able to do, and it shouldn't be very difficult to cache it.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a really big cache.
Why? It depends on the granularity.
Right.
Well, but it depends on the time.
Of course, it depends on the time.
Well, I mean, like geo-elevation doesn't change at all, for practical purposes.
That's true. But it's useful to have this as a function of time anyway. And it doesn't really matter. If we accumulate a few terabytes of data, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So wind vector data already takes an additional argument in which you can say, give me a geovector. That's very useful.
Okay. Yes, that is useful.
I think that landed, sometime last week?
Yeah. So geomagnetic model data and geogravity model data also do that now.
Okay. Nice. Okay, so fine. So what's the question here? So, I mean, these look beautiful. There are presumably a million different parameters for how long the arrows are and all kinds of things like that.
Right. And how long the arrows are, is going to be subject to improvement at some point in the future. Hopefully not too far in the future.
Right.
So the other thing that the GeoVector plot docs have at the moment is there was a meeting, I don't know, 6 months or so ago or something, where you suggested that the visualization functions should document all of the options.
Yes. I think they should be broken up.
They are.
Okay.
I mean, so right now I have it split by things that are, particularly interesting to this function versus everything else. I mean, possibly.
I think the everything else should be split up a bit. I think that's a bit long there.
Right.
I mean, this is a project to do this because there's a lot of visualization functions.
Correct. And I'll probably not,
I wouldn't do it here for right now. I would just grandfather these as we've done for other things right now.
Okay, sounds good.
And then we'll pick this up in 12.1.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anything else we need to go over with this?
I don't think so. I think so. There's also GeoStream plot, which is, list stream plot is to list vector plot as the geo things are, but
a stream plot is not obvious. I mean, a stream plot really is is it also taking vectors formally?
Yes.
It takes the same input as GeoVector plot.
No, I understand that, but is it obvious? A stream plot, in principle, is taking infinitesimal, or am I confused here? In other words, the vector actually has a destination point that might be 20 miles away or something. Or is
It
that
really
not the
gets
case?
it really gets you a vector field. You can interpolate it and you can solve along it. And so those
So
streams.
it's like a tangent. I mean, but one is like the tangent space, and the other is some kind of finite differencey thing.
Well, I mean, you could also view it as
Yeah,
a differential equation, system of differential equations, and those are
Yeah, right.
solutions along it.
fair enough. Fair enough. What is that? Is that real? That weird picture of the...
So it's updated a little bit since that was but it is
Okay, I really
showing
gotta
an actual set of vectors.
Okay, I need to go also, but okay, see you, Roger.
Yeah, I mean, if you evaluated that, copied it and evaluated it, you would see the new appearance of it. Which, do we still have Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, it's a blue spider instead of a black spider. It's like the blue
Inside a
dog.
frame, a little bit smaller.
Yeah, it looks nice. I mean, it looks perfectly okay, at least.
Hmm.
The idea here is that they are the true vectors. It's just that they are on the same point.
Yeah, I understand. That's fine. I mean, I think that's
It serves as a little histogram of
of the...
Directions, yeah. Mhm.
It's like one of those radar plot things or something. Okay, looks good. Anything else we need to go over?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, a lot of very nice stuff. Okay, thanks to folks on the live stream. Good comments, and see you all soon.
Okay, see you then. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.